That's how we own it.
What's up, family? It's your girl, Tamika D, Mallory.
And it's your boy, Mysonne, the General.
And we are your host of Street Politicians,
the place where the streets and politics meet.
What's up, my son? How you doing, sir?
Oh, man, I had a long weekend, but I'm blessed and highly favored, doing God's work as usual. And yourself?
I'm doing good. Been with my granddaughter. It's been a good holiday weekend that ends my attempt at a month-long vacation. August is the month. I have 2 months throughout the years. I try August and I try December. From Thanksgiving through Christmas or New Year's, I try to slow down as much as possible. So, and I'm blessed to be able to do that with all the other things that I do. But until freedom work, it just doesn't really allow that. We talked about it last week. It's kind of hard to really, really, really cut everything off. But I do feel a little restored. I feel rested. I feel like I enjoyed myself, and I took some much needed time. And so now this weekend, I got a chance to spend with my granddaughter, who I love so very much. She's so sweet and so precious and so inquisitive and so aggressive. And, it feels good. So now it's time to get back to work.
Yeah, I was with my grandson yesterday, man. We took my sons to see him. We had a little pool outing, so he's something else. He is a handful, and he loves his daddy. So he's a daddy's boy. So that was dope, man. But yeah, man, it's definitely been a long month. Unfortunately, I don't really never have the opportunity to completely break away from things. I was a soccer dad all weekend. Both of my sons, like y'all know, they both play soccer, so they were in the tournament for the holiday tournament. And those tournaments start at 8, 9 in the morning, and they're an hour away. So that means you got to get up at 6:30 to get ready to get there by 8:30 because you got to be there in advance for the game. So, and they don't finish till like 2 in the afternoon. And then they in the scalding heat. This is a hot weekend, so it's 90 degrees outside, and they both got 2 and 3 games back to back. So it was a long weekend, but it's always pleasurable to watch your sons and watch your offspring engage in sports and do things that they like. So, I can't complain.
Well, that's good. I feel like I did that and I know all about it. And it's funny because in the summer, it's really, really hot out there. My child played football, but when it starts getting cooler, then it's freezing and you still got to be out there. And it doesn't matter if you went out the night before, you still got to show up. You still got to have their stuff washed, prepared. It's no joke. You really have to be ready to have children. And I think about so many people out here who we've heard stories recently. And I know there've always been people to kill their kids or to do horrible, horrific things to their children. But now that, but it maybe because it's online more, I don't know what it is. And maybe it's post-COVID, the pandemic, but some people just don't need kids. They really don't, because all that stuff that you're talking about, while to you it comes natural. When I had to do it, I wouldn't say it came natural because I was much younger, but I still did it. And I had a lot of support from my family. My partner at the time was the coach. So we had a lot of support. But if there is somebody out there, a mother or a father, who is trying to do most of it alone, it is no joke. No joke. And people mentally, they're not all able to handle the responsibility of working and trying to keep your kids in activities. God forbid your child has some type of disability or some type of issue, and you trying to keep up with the programs and this and that and the third and cook food and blah, blah, blah. It's enough to make people lose their minds. And, it's just very, very, what's the word that I'm looking for? I don't want to say dangerous, but it can be dangerous for people to try to raise children in this society where things are so expensive, and sports for kids is like sports, like real professional sports. So it's a lot. bless your heart, because they still young. And here comes a little girl, just looking at my granddaughter as she is growing. She is very, when I say she's aggressive, if she wants something, she's going to do everything. You tell her no, put it down. She'll go around the other way. She'll slide backwards. She's going to figure out how to get that cup or that thing. And when you tired, you like, damn. So, and of course, that doesn't mean I'm saying I see how, or that it's an excuse for people, but I just know everybody doesn't need kids.
I agree 100%. That's why I always say that you can't force somebody to have a kid that's definitely not ready to have a kid, because you're doing more harm for the kid and that individual than anything. So I'm all on board with that.
Really. So let's get into our topics, because today we have a good guest and they're going to be coming on shortly. And so I want to make sure that we do talk about our topics, because we've also got some things that need to be, covered. And one of the things that is, speaking of children and how everybody doesn't need children, and it takes a village to raise each child. This year, I think this is the second year that the NYPD, the New York Police Department, did something around ceasefires that I think is really, really important. Needs to probably go a step further, but we'll talk about why I say that in a moment. But they went to the homes of, and not all of it was home visits, but they found, got in touch with, communicated with, whether it be home visits or, seeing them in the street, at least 40 gang members or people that that they consider to be in gangs, because I don't know all of these folks, so maybe they would say they're not in the gang at all. But they are people who have been identified as shooters
Allegedly. Allegedly.
Right. I said, they've been identified that way. Again, they might say a whole different thing, but they have been identified as shooters or problematic or in problems, or maybe, somebody in the community knows about some issues that they may have had or beef that they're in. And they found these people and asked them to have a ceasefire over Labor Day weekend. And it seems that shootings were down. And hopefully this is a part of it. It's not one thing. And that's what I always say, that it's not one thing. It's not just that they went to find these folks and at the NYPD, but then you also have the crisis management system under the the direct, I don't even want to say supervision, because, people don't really like when you use that terminology. There's a lot of leaders, but our brother A.T. Mitchell as the czar for anti-violence in the city of New York, and, and the whole crew that's been working alongside the mayor's office to try to reduce violence. So you have that going on during Juve, which is the parade that happens every Labor Day in Brooklyn. And then, of course, you just have lots of community organizations doing work. So when you put all of that together, it's a real good gumbo that helps to address violence and going out, actually communicating with people. First of all, there are people who might be super problematic that when they got either a knock at the door or a conversation on the, sidewalk, or a text message, or, whatever, that actually may have made them feel like, damn, somebody actually sees me. You never know. To come to me and put the kind of responsibility in my lap to help the city be safe, so that children and families can be outside and enjoy the weekend without there being violent incidents that make people uncomfortable and unable to come outside. So I think it was a good initiative.
It is a good initiative, but I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, you start.
It also scares you, right? When you've been identified and you're on the list as a shooter, and somebody that potentially out there shooting, it's like, oh shit, they know my name. They knocked on my door.
True.
You know what I'm saying? I gotta calm down. I need to rethink this, because I ain't trying to go to jail. If I'm in the police station and my name came up and they knocked on this door, it ain't really too much good things. It's either somebody's looking for me, I'm involved in some shit, or I've been identified somebody that they probably are watching all the time. So it's basically a heads up that you got to straighten your shit up, man.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. it is definitely a sign that you better get your shit together, because it's like a branch with many leaves. Because one side is like, hey, we're coming to you with the responsibility, hoping that you'll respect us as we are respecting you. We're also acknowledging that you think you some kind of like whatever, you think you are a boss or whatever in the community, which is some bullshit, but nonetheless, that's what you think. So we're also coming to you in that respect. But finally, we on your ass. We're on your heels. And we know who you are. We know your name. We know where you're from. We know the shit that's going on. We know exactly about you and Ray Ray's situation. We know all these things that's going on. And so we're here, we're coming to you. And that's also another part of it. The further piece, though, that I said is kind of like missing, or maybe it's not, well, it is missing, because when I think about what's happening in the city of Newark with Mayor Ross Baraka, and we were talking about this the other day, that they're employed, they are off the street and into jobs, they're into programs, there's money going into their pocket, their family, based upon them doing work around violence prevention. So I feel like if you can find these 40 to 50 people, then you should probably
employ them,
find them, and make sure that they have money in their pocket.
Exactly. Give them incentives to do something different. I totally agree. I tell you all the time, crime and violence is incentivized in our community, right? So if we want something else, then we got to incentivize that as well. You can't make people think they only get paid for doing negativity, and they can't be compensated and paid for doing something positive.
Absolutely.
It's not appealing. Nobody wants to be broke. So they're going to figure out, all right, I can get some money doing this. I can get some money doing, that's what I'm going to do. Now, if you show them, look, if you take the time out to be, a peace intervener, a violence interrupter in these communities, if you utilize that same power that you have to do something good, to save lives instead of put them in jeopardy, we're going to pay you for that.
And give you some skills, train them, give them some skills.
Give you power. People want power. They want position. A lot of these people, that's what they want. They want to be known. So if they can be famous and not infamous, and it can benefit them, and they ain't got to risk their freedom or risk their life, why wouldn't they do it?
I think that's the bigger part. And then it's like, it's so many things. Let's move on to the next topic, because we want to get the guest on and not hold her. It brings up this next thing about this woman who was hit by a brick. Now, big thing for me around this whole month, 2 months a year, right? 2 months a year, 8 weeks of 52 weeks. It's 52 weeks in a year. Yeah. 52 weeks. For 8, I'm on 30% work, right? So I try my best. Like, I literally go out of my way to be like, I'm not watching that. I'm not listening to it. I can't. There are so many leaders out here that jump in on many different issues. You always dealing with stuff, and I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. So now I saw that on your page, a woman was hit in the face, and I learned about it. Like, I don't know. I learned about it actually just kind of like over the weekend. I learned about it. And so I don't know what happened, but the next thing I know, I saw on your page that people were saying that she did a skit and a thing, and now this is fake or something. So I don't know if she was in the hospital with a fake gown on. Help me understand what happened.
The reality of the situation is, a young lady was obviously walking through the neighborhood, coming from somewhere. I don't know all the details of why she was in the neighborhood. And according to her, a guy asked her for a number, and she told him no. And based on that, he made the guy irate. He picked up a brick, put it to her face, and then hit her in the face with the brick. What's most disturbing about the situation is not just the fact that this one guy hit her with a brick, but there were multiple guys, happened to be Black guys. I think they might have been Haitian, but they were Black, regardless of what. They were around, and they watched this happen. And then after it happened, she goes on her video to show her face, which is sticking out like this, and she's saying that, the guy hit her in the face, and these Black men stood around and did nothing. And you hear in the background one of the guy who has, a West Indian accent saying, "What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? What you want us to do?" And that bothered me. You know, just the fact that it happened, and then hearing these men say, "What did you want you to do?" I would want you to try to stop a woman from being hit in the face with a brick. Right? I would think that would be your innate nature. I would think that would be the common sense thing for you to do. I think that would be the morale thing for you to do. But his response in that situation, and just seeing some of the responses online was just terrible. So then after, you know, I posted the video of her, and then posted, you know, the video of her. First, the video was of her in the hospital explaining. Then they showed the video of the guys actually saying this. So I post both of those videos, just you know, just expressing my concern and my dismay and disappointment in the fact that men stood around and watched another man hit a woman in the face with a brick. He could have literally killed her, right? And the fact that people think that having any level of intervention in that is wrong, or I don't know what's going on. I don't need to know what's going on to know that a woman should be getting facing the brick. I don't have to know all the details. She could have said the worst shit, or she could have stole money from you. But I want to protect both of y'all, because I don't want you to kill her and do the rest of your life in jail, and I don't want her to die. So me intervening is not purely just because I'm protecting somebody. No, because it's the right thing to do. What happened is the right thing to do is like, damn, I'm not. If I see a little kid running and I see somebody hitting him, the kid might have spit on you, might have stole something from you. If I see somebody about to swing a bat at a little kid, I'm going to intervene. I'm going to say, yo, don't hit the kid with a bat. Let me talk to you. I don't have to be, it's not about being tough. It's about just having any level of courage, just something. Any manhood, something. Like, how do men sit around and watch a woman get violently beat with a brick and say that it's okay? So then after that, what starts to surface online is this video, right? There's a video of her hitting a white man, saying something to him. I don't know exact words. She says something to him. She smacks him. She walks off. And then as she walks off, she twerks. Now, if anybody watched this video more than 3 times, you can tell it's a skit. It's not rocket science. The white man is standing there. She smacks him. He goes like this. She walks off, not even looking at him. She's not fearing that he's going to retaliate, because if you smack somebody in the face in the street in an argument, you know there's retaliation coming. You know she smacked him, didn't even look at the man. It was a tap, a light little tap. She walks off like he ain't even there. He doesn't look at her. He looks the other way. She goes about 5 steps and starts twerking. The video goes off, right? So anybody who's paying attention to that knows it's not real. But the people who want to discredit this woman's claim, the people who want to make it seem like it's justified that she was hit with a brick, found this video. They also found a video of her saying that how she's part of the LGBTQ. I don't know exactly what position she is, but she was saying that, you know, Black women control everything. They provide and protect. Right? Get you a Black woman, because that's what I'm going to do. You know, Black men ain't the ones out here really protecting us, this and that. And people were angry about that, the comments she made. But I say to myself, this situation proves the comments she made. It wasn't based on some shit that she just didn't know. When you watching this, when you can walk in the street and get hit in the face with a brick, and a bunch of Black men sit around and do nothing to ask you what they were supposed to do, then what her statement is 100% true. And I can't be mad at her for feeling the way that she felt. I can't even be mad at that statement. But even if you are mad at that statement, it does not justify a weak-ass man hitting a woman in the face with a brick. So they try to use all of those things to justify it. And I debunked those things and came up with the fact that everybody knows that was a skit that came up, right? And then what happened after that, one of the guys, quote unquote, allegedly, I don't know if he actually was there, but he went online saying that he was there and that he seen what happened, and the lady was looking for trouble, and she said some things to the guy that was rude, and she dared him to hit her with a brick. So, you know, she got what she was looking for, and if he could do it again, he still wouldn't protect her. And I thought that was just the worst shit in the world to me. I just didn't understand how a man can say, because words came out of a woman's mouth that you didn't like, that you was okay with her being hit in the face with a brick. I just don't understand it. The mind state that we have, you know, especially and people get mad, oh, you trying to put it all, it's on all. No, I take it on me too. It ain't about, I'm not saying y'all black men, no, it's me. Because if we doing something wrong as a society, if we not calling out individuals that do shit like that, if we not dealing with them on our own, if we not have some level of standard for manhood in our community, that certain shit is just not okay, then it's our fault. Because we empower people like that. When a man can walk like that, hit a lady in the face of the brick and jump in his car and leave without anybody saying or doing anything to stop him or deter him or say, yo, that shit ain't even right. Even if you was scared to death, you're not even saying, man, that's messed up, man. Come on, don't hit that lady like that. I don't want no problems, but come on, don't hit no lady with a brick. The fact that you couldn't even muster that up is because you normalize it and you think it's okay. So if black men in our community think that, then we are all failing. And we owe black women an apology, because the fact that they don't feel safe, and I'm going through my comments with so many people saying, oh, she deserved that, you see this video. And the fact that people look for that stupid ass video to try to justify, and it only took me 10 seconds to realize it was skit. But that's when you actually are intentional and you want to make sure that what you're saying is correct. When you want to not discredit somebody, when you're not trying to look for an excuse to justify a woman getting beat in the face, So it's just a whole situation, and it really disappointed me, man. I felt sorry for the woman. She was crying, her face, like she had a big swollen face. Some people try to say it's made up. It's just like, yo, damn. And it brought me to Meghan. It reminded me of Meghan. And that kind of hurt me. It's like, damn, we're going through this shit again. A woman was shot, one woman hit with a brick, and we make them, the people that's the problem. We villainize the victim. And that is crazy to me. It is so crazy to me that that, and the man said, yeah, he hit her in the face with a brick, but she was looking for trouble. What does looking for trouble mean? What exactly does that entail? You said some words. As a man, we're not strong enough to hear a woman, a stranger that we don't know, say some words we don't like and walk away and just go the other way like whatever. Even if you yelled at her, even if you was mad and you cursed, I can deal with cursing more than I can deal with a man feeling that he is justified in hitting a woman in the face with a brick for words that she said come out of her mouth. So, it's really been a tough day for me. Just ever since because it was my DMs, we were at our fabulous sister's son's wedding, so all those DMs I didn't get. But, when I actually got a chance to look at it, it was like, I couldn't believe that shit actually happened. I felt so bad. I'm like, damn, how have we moved this far away from consciousness as men? How have we moved this far away from our natural order? Our natural order is supposed to be provide and protect. How do we just negate the protect part? And it hurts.
I don't have anything to say. It is what it is. I already know what it is. I didn't know all of these details. And once you say the part, once you said that she made statements about the men not protecting women and all of that, as soon as you said that, then I'm like, oh, I see exactly what it is. So that's the reason why it's okay that she was hit in the face with a brick for a lot of people, because that statement makes people feel.
But the thing is, for me, is you didn't know about the statement. You didn't know about the statement when she got hit in the face with a brick.
Yeah, but it's just we don't have time. We don't have time now to unpack it more and get deeper into it. But we've done it many times on this show, and it just continues to show itself. And so hopefully there are some who see it and understand. And then there are some people who will never see it and they'll never understand. And that's just it for me. This other conversation that we've been engaged in all weekend, and it's very similar in that, the conversation around Love and Hip Hop and Erica Mena calling Spice a monkey.
Nowhere, 16. Okay? 16. Okay, with 16 your son that don't like you. You want to mention my kid? You should have died, bitch! You monkey! You blue monkey!
I've already made a million statements about how I feel. One of the questions that was asked of me directly and it has been many other people. Shabazz asked me directly, but other people have asked me, do I draw the line at racism? And I wrote a whole thing about, about that. And I want to make sure for the purpose of our conversation today, that we state some things, right? Because I see so many narratives popping up on the internet. First of all, I want to say that I have not said, nor would I ever say, that Erica Mena is racist, because we know that the terminology racism or a person being racist means that they have some power to impact, affect, change the lives of people of color or Black folks or other marginalized groups, and that they have the power to oppress a group of individuals. And I don't believe that the Latino community, for the most part, while there are some people within the Latino community who consider themselves to be white adjacent, but they still are participating in white supremacy and peddling racist narratives and comments, but it does not mean that I would say that they are racist. So we have to be clear about that. I think that the comment that she made is a racial slur, and that is different from saying somebody is racist. I don't know her well enough to make that determination and to say that about her, by the way. Also, what I read in the statement that was put out by Love and Hip Hop is not that she was fired. It looks like a suspension because they say in the statement, next season, they could easily say that she is no longer with the Love and Hip Hop franchise. They could have said that. So I did not see it saying that she was fired or her contract has been terminated. And she would not be the only person on these reality shows to have faced in the past suspensions. Even Portia, who is our sister, was suspended for fighting on she was on Housewives of Atlanta. So people do get suspended. They have periods where there's breaks or whatever as different issues are being worked through. So that's the other thing. The third thing, this is just my pieces, right, is that I have not said, nor would I have probably ever been advocating for Erica Mena to be canceled, right? What I have been talking about is that there must be an understanding of the use of racial slurs and how those things should never be on the table. People say, well, her child shouldn't. That's fine. You can argue all day that the insults of saying something about a person's child, the insult of talking about people dirty, stink, funky, whatever you want to say, those are insults. They shouldn't be happening. It's out of line. It's all of that. But racial slurs absolutely go into a different area. If you are a child and you're in a school and you always playing around and moving around and doing whatever, and you constantly getting in trouble because you won't sit still, that's one thing. And that in and of itself might have you going to the principal's office. There may be issues. But if you get caught cheating on a test, that raises the level. And now there's such thing as suspension and or even being expelled from the school. So people need to stop acting like there are not levels to life. You can maybe take a piece of candy from the store and get in trouble for it. Maybe you go down to the courthouse because you get caught for stealing. But if you rob a bank, your ass is going to probably get a felony conviction and serve lots of time. There's levels to everything in life. Mm-hmm. So you could say that the stealing of the candy in the store was wrong. And it might get you a little misdemeanor, or you might go downtown and the judge might say, slap on the wrist, don't ever do it again. But if you get caught doing a bank heist, there's a whole different set of consequences associated with that.
The consequences increase immensely.
Absolutely. And so therefore, folks need to stop playing it's all the same. It is not all the same. And what is sad to me is that the conversation around, first of all, what is very noticeable of Black people who are speaking on this topic is the lack of knowledge that people have about our history. You can see it. You can see it in the responses from different people in different areas, folks who are supposed to be, people who are entertainers or people who have public profiles. You can hear literally their lack of understanding of our history just based upon the ignorance of what they are even saying, right? Because, and I'm gonna finish this here because we have to go and come back and complete these conversations a little bit later. But I would say this. One of the things that I appreciate when we talk about going to that Palestinian wedding, right? Linda's son had an incredible, incredible wedding, in which we do too. So I'm not trying to say Black folks don't, we have history, we got culture, we got all of that. But it was a beautiful wedding. And I would actually drop this in as my thought of the day today. Watching the family come together in the way in which they did for that Palestinian wedding, one of the things that I appreciate is that they passed down their culture and their history from generation to generation, right? I think about some of our brothers and sisters in the African community, Africans who are either here in the US now or when we went to Africa. And we saw how you could go into any facility, you could be walking around the streets, and the Africans can tell you the story down to the children of their history, what has happened to them, what took place there in Africa. Same thing with the Haitian community. When I was in Haiti, I was talking to young kids, 10 and 12 years old, while we were out on tours, just a part of their education. And I get it, Mysonne, that a part of the effects of white supremacy and enslavement and all of that is that they cut us off from our history. And that's why they are trying to ban it in schools even still today, because they don't want us to know. Because if we understood our history, if we truly understood all that has happened to us, where we are today, it doesn't mean we have to live and soak in it, but understanding it means that we would never be okay with somebody using a racial slur against us. We'll never be okay with it. Because I promise you, you cannot sit on a show and get into an argument with a Jewish individual and then say, oh, you kike. You can't do that. Because once you do, whatever else y'all was dealing with, the level has now kicked up. And the difference between other communities and our community is that for the most part, they are going to have a group of individuals within their community that will organize against you, and the rest, the others, probably won't say much unless they think an injustice is truly being done. So we have been so disconnected from who we are. We have been taught to actually ignore that as a form of achievement and success, so much so that we lend ourselves to the negative and disrespectful narratives about us. And it is very, very, very dangerous. We come back, we can talk about, you should definitely respond now, but when we come back, we should talk about the whole Love and Hip Hop brand, because that has been a big topic of conversation, and I have much to say about that.
Well, based on what you said, I think you hit everything on the head. I think I went online and I just wanted to make it clear that calling a Black person a monkey is definitely a racial slur. It's not okay. It's historic. There's things, and it's even historic in our communities as of now. It doesn't even all the way go back to, slavery and white supremacy. It dates in our communities now. It's between Blacks and Hispanics. Those are one of the main racial slurs used by Hispanics who when they angry with you,
Latinos.
they call you monkey.
Latinos.
I mean, Latino. I apologize. It is one of the main slurs that I personally encountered those slurs, and those are things that is known within our communities. We know that. We know Blacks and Hispanics know Latinos. Blacks and Latinos know what the words that you don't use. Like they say, oh, you let the people use nigga and this, and I get it. But in our communities, since we grew up so comfortably, the fact that Blacks utilize that as a term of endearment, utilize it in their daily ebonics every day, and their best friends are Latinos, it naturally comes out. We call each other, that's my nigga, that's my nigga. We utilize that. Maybe it's not the right thing, but we have identified that this is a comfortable space for us in our communities. There are a lot of people who don't think it's and they have the right to believe that. But absolutely nowhere in our community is it okay for a Latino to call a Black person a monkey. I've seen whole wars started, family wars started. My mother went down and whipped the lady's ass in the store, in the bodega, for calling me and my sister a monkey. I didn't even know what the word monkey was in Spanish. I learned it because they said it to me a few times. I used to go there and they used to laugh at us and say, little mono, tú eres mono, tú eres mono. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? And somebody told me, and I went to my mother, they called me a monkey. And then it became a little thing. Whenever it would be like a problem, somebody would say it under their voice, they're screaming, tú eres mono. And so we know there's a history. You understand what I'm saying? So
and I just want to insert in that, what I hear you saying is that, which, again, we can argue that, the use of the word, the use of the word nigga is problematic for XYZ reason. But the thing is, the word nigga, when saying it, because they try to say, well, Fat Joe says it and this and that and the third and, whatever, and he's an artist and he's Latino, and that was a whole big topic. That term can be used or has been used and is often used while people are laughing and joking and talking and being together. And like you said, in some ways, endearment, although I don't agree with that terminology, because I try to stay away from using that term to talk about us as well. But people are laughing. Never, ever in the history of ever, when you has a person said monkey in a good way. Never. No. It's never been done.
It's used in discourse.
It's derogatory.
Exactly. It's used during negative discourse to be derogatory. It's never a term of endearment. So we understand that. So when people try to, conflate the two things, it doesn't add up. And furthermore, the disappointment that I have in just our people. I was listening to Jess Hilarious and her actually trying to justify it. And the statement that she made was, I don't think Erica Mena is racist. Nobody says she was racist. But we said she used a racial slur. And she said, well, if she called Spice a monkey, maybe she looks like a monkey to her. And I thought that coming from another Black woman, dark-skinned Black woman, who I've known has heard things about her skin color and had probably been called all types of names, I thought that was so crazy to me, that you've embraced a level of racist connotation and you've taken on that. And you think we should all take on it because you've embraced it. That you've embraced a level of actual what is called self-hate, that you push it onto somebody else. And that shit is, and it's so hard for us because we can't even stay on code. There will never be white people that come out and justify you calling them a name that's derogatory. Like you said, there'll never be Jewish people that come out and justify a slur that's used against them and anybody. They just not against anybody else. They'll mind their business. They might talk to you as a friend and say, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but you know, that you probably shouldn't have used that terminology, and I love you. You know, we don't even have the wherewithal to understand that that's where we are. Erica Mena could be your close friend. If she was my close friend, I'm going to pull her to the side and say, babe, I know you probably was mad, but you can't call no black woman no monkey. Not no dark-skinned black woman. That ain't going to work out. It just don't work out.
Well, that did happen. That did happen. That's what I'm saying. That did happen.
I'm saying just hilarious. I'm not saying, I don't know if just hilarious did. I know we under the,
I understand what you're saying.
exactly. We're under the understanding that there were other people who came to her in that fashion, like, yo, I love you and everything, but there's a history of that. You can't use that against them. And whatever her response was actually led to where we are now. What I'm saying is the fact that we are allowing people to make us feel like racial slurs and disrespect to us is something that we should just take and just move on from, and we're embracing it. It's self-hate to me, and it really hurts me.
I would say this. I don't know that, I guess when I hear you using the word embrace, and I understand what you're saying. I think that Jess would push back and say, I'm not embracing anything. I'm just saying that it's not as serious as people are making it.
But that means you're embracing it. If you don't find something serious that a whole culture finds serious, that means you in some way.
Well, not a whole, because see, that's the thing. We have to be careful about absolutes, because a whole culture doesn't find
it. Means the majority of the culture.
All right. Okay.
Because if the majority of the culture didn't do it, then we wouldn't be here in a situation.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree. Let me just finish my point so we can get into our guests. What I'm saying is, I don't think that Jess probably feels like she's embracing it. I think that what she's trying to say is that people, like, she doesn't believe that this young lady is racist, and therefore, because of that, we shouldn't be making it this big thing. It might just be a statement that she made that's on the fly. Here's what I want to say about that. That's our problem, is that too much shit just happens on the fly with us. We're too okay with too much of the things that go on. And as a result, we're being murdered, not just by the police, but by our own people within our communities. Domestic violence is out of control. Some of us can't get opportunities, jobs, bank loans. We're being mistreated because when we start saying things like, well, I don't think that that's serious, and maybe this and that and the third. I'm not just talking about Jess, I'm talking about all these people in general. Folks don't think we take ourselves seriously enough.
That's what I'm saying. We're normalizing, and we are okay in shit that ain't okay.
Yeah. So let's pause there and bring our guests in. We kept saying over and over again that we were going to invite the great Megan Cuniff to come and be a part of our show. And every time new things happen. So we said, we gotta wait, because we wanted to really have a good, deep, expansive conversation with you about all the things. And I think the main thing for us is that we're like, okay, she's a journalist that we didn't know until now, but there must be more to her than just Tory Lanez and Meg the Stallion. And so
absolutely,
we wanted to bring you on and talk about that today. Thank you so much. Meghann Cuniff is joining Street Politicians today, and we are so appreciative of having you as our guest.
Thank you so much.
So how are you today, Megan?
I'm doing good. It's Tuesday after Labor Day weekend, and that seems to represent like a change, right? Like summer's going to be ending soon. Kids are going back to school. Like it's time to like focus and work. But I'm kind of at the point where I'm ending this big coverage that I did, and I'm like, I want to stop working so much. I want to kind of take it easy. I need to get out more and reclaim my summer.
You sound like Tamika.
That's what I've been saying. I saw you on a bike somewhere like yesterday.
Yes.
You were biking.
Yes, got to get back into that. Like during the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, I lost my job at the Daily Journal. They cut like half the staff, and I was doing the unemployment pandemic thing. And I went on a bunch of road trips to national parks. Got really into that, and with that, you get in pretty good shape. And I was doing big hikes. I went to Yosemite and did Clouds Rest with the idea to eventually do Half Dome, which is like the big hike in Yosemite. And then I got a job at law.com, and then I got a move to Law and Crime, and it was like celebrity trial news, get into the LA coverage scene. And I'm like, okay, I've kind of lost track of my hiking plans. I haven't been able to play some trails like I wanted to.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not hiking and enjoying life as you once were, because what you have decided to dedicate yourself to, it is cumbersome. It is tiring. It's 24 hours a day, because something can happen middle of the night, early in the morning. And, people start relying on you for information. And so, I just want to thank you so much for what you've been doing. I really, truly think that you are a rock star in terms of how you've been juggling this newfound celebrity that you have. You may not want to accept that, but you do. So Mysonne, you go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah. So, I'm just interested to know, how did you get into journalism? Like, where did it start?
It's always been an interest of mine, and I credit my family. My dad was a criminal defense attorney. Well, he was a small town attorney in Oregon, so he did criminal defense, but also divorce, civil cases. He kind of a broad range of things, and he was really interested in politics and journalism. And he died in 2003. But during high school, I mean, we would have conversations about political events, current events. He was really interested in the O.J. Simpson trial, and he was skeptical of the police. He always had, he was a criminal defense attorney, so he was always giving us advice on, never let them search your car, that kind of thing. I mean, those were just things that we were kind of taught early on. Like he got a seatbelt ticket once, and he fought it all the way that he could. I just remember a really intense, passionate dinner discussion about dad getting this seatbelt ticket. And of course, he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, but he was convinced that there was no way the cop could have actually seen that he wasn't wearing a seatbelt because of the color of the seat in the car and the color of the seatbelt. So he knew that this cop was just making this up, and he was going to challenge it. I don't remember what happened with it, but it was like, 4 or 5 years old. Those are like my searing memories.
Obviously, Tory Lanez, his case is not the first case you covered, but it's when we encounter you.
Right.
And so can you talk about some of the other things that you've done? You said Law and Crime at, what is it? What was it?
Law.com.
Law.com.
Yeah.
So talk about the other cases that you've covered.
Yeah, I started working at the high school paper, and then always kind of knew I wanted to do journalism. So I was at the college paper, University of Oregon, Go Ducks, and then went up to Spokane, Washington, and worked at the Spokesman Review in Boise, Idaho, covering the legislature for a year, doing an internship with their Idaho legislature reporter. Then went up to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and Spokane, Washington was when I started covering courts more, because I was the night cops reporter, and then I moved to the dayside cops shift. And I kind of realized that the courthouse was where you found out more information about the people that you wrote about who got arrested. Like you could go to the courthouse and there would be, affidavits and stuff there explaining the cases. So I got into it through that, and then moved to California in 2013 to work at the Orange County Register. It was when they were doing this kind of pie in the sky expansion, like we're going to save newspapers. And they had a couple of guys buy the paper and want to, rekindle newspapers. And it kind of turned out to be kind of a scam involved. They were doing stuff with the retirement fund and everything. There was a big lawsuit, but for a couple of years, there was like this renaissance time at the Orange County Register where they were just hiring reporters to do really good work. And I was actually hired to cover, if you can believe it, the city of San Juan Capistrano. If you've heard of that, the Swallows of San Juan Capistrano. About as small town California as you can think. I mean, in small town America, San Juan wouldn't count as a small town because it's 35,000 people and it's in South Orange County. But they've got the city council, the planning commission, and the Orange County Register had a a weekly called Capistrano Valley News. So my job was to fill the Capistrano Valley News. And it was my first experience in Southern California. I kind of went into it having watched those episodes of Weeds. Do you guys remember that show?
Weeds.
Yeah, and the politics with the city council on that. And then also Parks and Rec. There was a very big Parks and Rec vibe to it. But it was a very small town. The town had a lot of infighting about development and traffic. But for like a year and a half, I covered that stuff. But they also had a big lawsuit over water rates. They had done pie in the sky water rates and were getting sued by some residents who, of course, they just written off as gadflies. But actually, the residents were like retired professionals who knew what they were talking about. And they ended up screwing up water rates for the entire state in the middle of a drought. Like the governor actually issued a statement about this appellate court ruling that had come against San Juan for their water rates. And it was kind of my first introduction to courts in Southern California. So I went from the Register to the Daily Journal, and the LA Daily Journal was really where I feel like I became like a legal affairs reporter, covering all sorts of cases and getting to know all sorts of lawyers and judges, because the Daily Journal is like a clubby little newspaper for lawyers in the judiciary. It's been around since like the late, over a century. It was like the Daily Court Journal, but it was bought by Charles Munger back in the 80s, and he kind of wanted it to be like a gift for the legal community. So it's basically just profiles of judges, really in-house news on litigation and stuff, but it's very civil based. They've got, maybe when I was there, we maybe had 10 reporters, and one of them covers criminal justice and all the others cover various types of civil cases. So that's where I really got to know the system really well and felt like I was a court reporter. And I feel like I applied that stuff to the Lanez stuff. Like, we didn't cover celebrity cases so much at the Daily Journal, but you just learn how the court system works so much. I wanted to get out of like the silo of paywalled legal affairs journalism. Like almlaw.com, where I went after that, is very paywalled, like lawyers only. They're writing for lawyers. They're not writing for the mainstream at all. So I wanted to find a way to like marry the two. Like, how can you take what you learned covering legal affairs journalism in the siloed paywalled area and move it to social media? And like Law and Crime was a good way to kind of transition on that.
So was this like your first high profile case that you covered?
It was definitely the most high profile case that I'd covered. I had gotten the first time I ever went on TV was actually Nancy Grace. I think she's still around, but does anyone remember her when she had the fill-in show? Yeah, really.
I used to watch it.
Yeah, really.
She's kind of like conservative, right?
Yes, like going against, they're all guilty kind of thing. But there was a babysitter in Post Falls, Idaho, who'd been arrested for murder involving a kid that she was babysitting. So I had written about that for the Spokesman Review and went on TV for that. So I'd had a little bit of experience in doing some Oxygen shows, like so what was the name of the show? A couple of murder cases they spotlighted when I was doing there. But Lanez was by far the most high profile case, because before it was probably Michael Avenatti. Do you guys remember him? The lawyer for Stormy Daniels, who was really in 2018, he sued Trump, and there was actually serious talk of him being a presidential candidate for a couple of weeks, which is kind of crazy. But I covered all his financial fraud cases in California for a year and a half, and that was the most high profile that I'd gotten. That got a lot of attention, and he was giving me a lot of flack online, and he has this like dedicated group of like 5 Avenatti cultists on Twitter who were always attacking me and going. So I remember when I was telling somebody about all the flack that I was getting from the Tory Lanez stuff, somebody was like, well, it sounds exactly like Avenatti. And I was like, well, no, it's actually way bigger. And they're like, no, it's actually just like Avenatti. And it kind of is, but it was.
Well, you know that a lot of people are really trolls, and they've made up several pages so they could go and talk from different pages and try to discredit you. So we found that out. And my son likes to argue with people online who are all who I look at them, like sometimes I'll start like getting ready to make a comment too, and then I click it and the person has like 2 followers, and I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and then
I'm
the
not
page
wasting my
just
time.
made.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, I did say in a live I did a while back, I was like, okay, I need to start writing down these fake names that they're coming up with. There's one Maxwell Troy the other day. I was like, okay, that's a good one. Good old Maxwell Troy. when he's not passionately defending Tory Lanez in the comments on a YouTube channel, he's, you know, running your local high school computer science club or something. Who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. He's like in the basement of a building.
Yeah.
So let me see. How do you pick the cases? Now, maybe you didn't have, I get that in the previous spaces, it was sort of assigned and or something that you were really interested in. And so you kind of jumped into it. How did you decide, like, Tory Lanez, this is a case I'm going for, because you did basically most of this independent, right?
Yeah. Well, I was with Law and Crime when the trial started, and they're really into celebrity news. So I was there at that courthouse covering Harvey Weinstein, the movie producer's rape trial, and then Danny Masterson, that 70s show actor, Stephen Hyde. They were having two cases at the same time. So I was already there. And then I'd heard from the Law and Crime Network people that there was interest in the Tory Lanez case. So I was like, well, if I'm already here, I might as well cover it. And then, I mean, at the time I was a couple of months off from covering Cardi B's trial in Santa Ana. She was actually sued by somebody over the album art to Gangsta Bitch Music volume.
Right.
And she won, but she was in court for a few days and actually testified. So I was like, okay, how many people in their life get to say that they saw testimony from the two women responsible for the WAP song within like 2 months of each other in two separate courthouses and two unrelated trials? Like I've got to at least be there for Megan's testimony, right? But then when I stepped into it, I just realized, I mean, it's such a more serious case to even bring it up in the same breath as that Cardi B lawsuit is. I mean, the Cardi B lawsuit was kind of silly, but you can't say that about the Tory Lanez case. It's a pretty serious case. And I just realized how much attention there was to it. I'm like, wow, I think people wanted me to cover this case. I should keep covering it.
After you cover this case, right? I've seen a lot of pushback you would get. Just a lot of pushback. And I found out about you, you know, after Tamika had actually went to the court one time, and she was telling me some of the things that she's seen inside the court.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found you on Twitter, you were saying pretty much the same things that she had verbatim seen and other people that I knew were in the courtroom. So I said, this person seems like they actually are non-biased and just reporting the facts of the case. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I try to be.
So what I want to know is, what was that process like as you posted and you were getting responses back? Was most of them positive, or were you immediately getting the Lanez people that's like, you're biased?
For the most part, it was really positive, especially in the very beginning. I think it was the trial started on Monday, I think, and it was like Wednesday when I would look at my phone and be like, wow, this is like the most responses that I've ever gotten on Twitter. And it was just kind of getting blown up. But I remember I saw a message from some random person. It was a reply that just said, thank you for this non-bias. And the this is spelled DIS. And I was just like, I mean, it was just new. Like I don't usually get those kind of replies, or it's usually like lawyers or something replying to my tweets. So, I mean, I thought it was cool. I was like, this is awesome. Like, people are appreciating the coverage, and just that, what he said, like, thank you for this. This is non-biased. It's like, what bigger compliment could you give a reporter who's trying to do that? You know, it's like, oh, yeah. I mean, it was heartening, and it was like inspiring to like keep going. So I did see once a tweet that said, it's unfortunate that a white lady with a bob is our only source of reliable information. And it was kind of like, and one of my friends was like, are they making fun of your hair? I'm like, no, I think I need to embrace it. But it kind of underscored, it's like, it's a really sensitive issue. And the point that they made wasn't anything to kind of diss me. It was just a comment on like the state of journalism and Black representation in journalism that I saw. And it just kind of struck me. I'm like, the issues in this are like so heavy for society. It's like way bigger than anything like a thieving lawyer defrauding his clients is serious. But just like the way media deals with violence against women and violence against Black women, like I just realized it was like all there. And then I remember I was using Instagram a little bit, but not so much. It was more of a personal page, but it's not like it was locked down. And I'd gotten a comment on like a photo like months and months back of bookcases behind there, and somebody would have had to scroll through a few pictures to see these books. But the comment was, they added Megan Thee Stallion, and they said she has books about what they did to your people but you can't. And it was some kind of insult to Meghan or some kind of diss to Meghan after that. But the first part where they're like, she has books about what they did to your people, and I'm like, they're talking about the two books that I had, Uncle Tom's Cabin and then We Are Not Afraid. I mean, slavery and the civil rights movement. And I just remember being like struck that like how personal it was for people that somebody would like take the time to do that and like look through the photos. And I didn't feel like attacked by it or anything. It was just like, I mean, I'm a journalist and you're kind of a public figure when you're doing that. So, I mean, I shouldn't be bothered that somebody looked through like public photos that I had, but it just like underscored like how important this was for people and how like personal it was for people. Like other cases that I cover would not warrant that kind of response. And I also just remember being kind of proud that I had those books and being like, this is a really sensitive issue, but if I just keep doing what I do, and like I don't have anything to worry about, like, because you always hear those things about somebody getting a lot of attention and then somebody goes back and finds some tweets from like 10 years ago where they're saying awful stuff and they're like, oh well, that was 10 years ago. It's like, well, why were you ever saying that, you know? But I just knew that I didn't have anything like that, so I'm like, I should be good if I just keep doing what I'm doing. And but it was a little overwhelming to get all the responses all the time and be like, do I respond or do I not? But unfortunately, the trial was just so busy that I could just focus on that. And
focus on that. Well,
yeah.
you know what? So I was going to bring this up, but you started actually, you mentioned it first in terms of the racial dynamics of you being a white woman covering this case and becoming a very important source of information. I think I have to say that what's his name, Dennis Byron, also sort of became an important source, especially as a Black man covering the case. And I see that the two of you now share conversations and online sources and whatnot, which is good. I appreciate Dennis, although he and I don't always agree, which I'm sure that's just a part of life. But when you mention DIS, very clear that for the most part, the person who said that is more than likely a younger person in general, and maybe an African-American, because it has become a part of our lexicon, right? Especially for younger people. Then when someone says the Black woman with the bob, the white woman with the bob, absolutely. As a Black woman, I can tell you that I have definitely noticed that Meghann Cuniff is the white woman with the bob, right? Like that's something. So that more than likely was a Black woman who noticed it. And then the person who is saying they know the history, I can imagine that the quote was probably something like, she has books about your people's history and you're allowing this Black man to be crucified, knowing that he didn't do the thing and this and that. So more than likely that was probably a Black man. And I'm stereotyping here or typecasting, if you will, but it's just based upon what I know, being online and also dealing with Black people all my life.
Yeah.
Question for you is, why were you reading those books? Do you have a relationship, or are you involved in the Black community? Like, tell me about your experience in terms of dealing with Black folks. And if not much, did you learn a lot about us, about the way we communicate, about the things that really truly divide our community as you were covering this case?
Yeah, the truth is I don't have much experience. If you just look where I grew up in Corvallis, Oregon, and then up in Spokane, Washington. I remember I was talking to Neek the other night, who does the YouTube channel Neek at Night. I'm like, look, there were 2 Black kids in my entire elementary school when I was growing up. And while, people in Corvallis, Oregon are very liberal. Like, they're anti-racism. If you go to Corvallis, there's Black Lives Matters signs in people's windows, that kind of thing. But it's that white liberalism that I'm sure has been discussed, all over, that you see that doesn't mean that there isn't like racism there, just from the fact that there just aren't many Black people there growing up. So in my position as a journalist, I've never really gotten like too involved in like activist movements, but especially when the Black Lives Matter protest started and the George Floyd murder protest started, because one perspective I think I can bring to that is somebody who can be like, oh yeah, if you see the way the cops just treat you know, anyone, if you add racism into that, it's horrible, you know? I mean, I have no doubt that that cops are out of control in shootings and that they do target Black people like disproportionately, and that something needs to be done about it. But as a reporter, I mean, getting involved in the movement and that kind of thing, you're kind of not supposed to do that. But as a journalist, I feel like I can bring light to the situations by covering civil rights movement or covering civil rights trials against cops, which I've done a lot. Like I've seen a lot of cops testify in court. And I feel like if I can just tell people what I see through that, that'll help. But then when the George Floyd thing started, I was actually doing that, the pandemic road trip to national parks. So I was actually up in Salt Lake City because I was going to go up to Yellowstone and Grand Teton, and they were having protests up there. I mean, God, Salt Lake City. And of course the cops just went crazy. Like apparently one person tipped over a cop car. So they just shut down the entire city, like put a whole perimeter around the downtown or something. And it was ridiculous because when you see the way the people were, I mean, the people have every right to protest this. And when you see that video, it's like, yeah, I think people are going to be out in the streets like protesting this. Of course they were. They were protesting all over the country. And the cops line up in this big military row and they're just like bringing it. I mean, they're totally there just instigating shit and starting shit. And I see it all the time and it pisses me off. So when you add race and just the institutional racism and the disadvantages that just are kind of caked into society through that, you add that with the police, it's like, God, what, you know, the horror of that. But so I was trying to think of like, what can I do, like as just a white lady with a bob, you know, like I mean, I live in South Orange County. You know, I work a lot. You know, I go out. I remember I went to visit a friend in Washington, DC, and it was like, it felt like a lot more diversity than I'm used to, which is just kind of a nice thing to do, to just go out and see diversity. But one thing I wanted to do was read more books. And that's what I was reading about, like, what can white people do to try to like help things and make more of a difference other than just, you know, protesting and being publicly against this stuff. And that's read more books about the Black experience. So as somebody who, I haven't been able to read that much this year because of all the work that I've been doing, but I have tried to read more Black authors like Jesmyn Ward. Colson Whitehead is a big one. And it's not like a chore to do this. I mean, Colson Whitehead is like one of the best authors out there today. So, but I kind of make a point of trying to read books about stuff that I wouldn't normally know about or be exposed to, and I think that's important for everybody to do, to kind of learn about that. But I mean, I don't know if that's it's great.
I asked the other question, and then because I know you have to go in a few moments, so I just want to get back to that, and then Mysonne, you jump in about, did you learn a lot about what divides our community, like, you know, and some of the tensions you know, that came up around this case?
Yeah, definitely. It just seems like there's huge issues with just representation in media and how stuff is portrayed in like mainstream media. And then just not the problems with the criminal justice system, kind of inherently distrusting the criminal justice system in the way it deals with Black men, but then also having the problem of Black women traditionally not being trusted and not being believed in public society. So it was like this interesting mesh of those two issues, and how skepticism was kind of born through both those things. I mean, I feel like I was talking to some people about, you know, what are some possible book possibilities for this that's not just focused on the Megan Thee Stallion issue and the harassment, but just the whole issue of like online stan culture and celebrity obsession, and how that is like coming into the criminal justice system. Like, how do you deal with that? There's so many issues there. Like, what, I mean, are there other issues that I'm missing, or do you think I hit
No, I think I mean, Mysonne, you can speak to it. I think you're right that one of the biggest challenge here is that even people of good moral whatever, or people who were really good people, who are fighters, like for advocates for our community, struggled with a Black man going to prison, and then a Black woman also being mistreated and not believed, not trusted. So those things happened all at once, and it did absolutely create a lot of tension in our
Yeah.
community. But so Mysonne, you go ahead and jump in.
So for me, this is a two-pronged question. I want you to give me what was the most surprising thing that you heard in the trial, and based off what you might have read, other than your own commentary and your own, reporting of the trial, what do you think was one of the biggest misconceptions on just the media that they put out that you found out while you were in the courtroom wasn't accurate? Is that, and you knew
the media or online? Because the media
online,
really,
not the media, but the online, the chatter. If you were tuned into it, because there was for me, there was just so many things that were just so conflicting based on what you were saying, based on what people that know were in the courthouse, evidence that was being presented, than what was being put onto the websites.
Yeah, probably the most surprising thing for me in the beginning was going in there and then realizing that it was actually like really big news that Tory's lawyer was admitting that Meghann was shot. That I didn't realize, and it was surprising to me that there was even a narrative saying that she wasn't even shot, because I mean, it stems from her saying that she stepped on glass in the very beginning, but to me it just seems so understandable why she would say that, and why she wasn't ready to just tell the cops that, oh yeah, someone shot me and there's a gun in the car. I mean, just with everything we just talked about with the police, that all made sense to me. So I was surprised at the narrative on that. And then one thing that the focus on her relationship with Tory, and just the fact that she'd gone on Gayle King and denied having an intimate relationship with him, but then it turns out that they had that they had been intimate. It was just like, why is this even? I mean, I guess I can understand why it came up, and the prosecutors were disclosing it to the defense after they talked to Meghan after the Gayle King interview. But it just seemed like, why is there even a focus on this? Like, why? I mean, I just didn't understand how much of a role it actually played in the case. And it seems surprising to me and kind of shocking to me that they would have, like, the prosecutors would have that as part of the case. But there's so much focus on the fact that she lied in that Gayle King interview, and if she lied about this, how could you believe anything that she said? It's like, why was she even being asked about that?
Right.
And I don't know. It just seemed inappropriate. It doesn't really have anything to do with the fact that he shot her. Well,
right.
Of course, but it does, though, because it's the domestic violence. I mean, they weren't just two strangers who just happened to be in the same location. It was prosecuted by the domestic violence, family violence unit. So, I mean, it was like she said, I mean, he's an abuser. It had the makings of that. And just the way Alex Bott, the prosecutor in the trial, in the closing argument, I remember he was going through the phone call that Tory made from jail to Kelsey, where he's apologizing, but he's not saying exactly what he's apologizing for. But Bott was just saying, what else could he possibly be talking about here? And he draws the jury's attention to when Tory is asking Kelsey what hospital Megan's at. Just the way he asks it, and he's so persistent. He asked it a couple of times, but he said, pay attention to the way he asked what hospital she's at. And he's just like, what hospital is she at? And Kelsey tells him, and then like maybe a minute or so later, he asks again, and Kelsey's like, oh, I just told you. And part of me is like, wants to say, any woman who's ever had to deal with some dumbass man will recognize Kelsey's tone in that phone call. But it's like, oh yeah, some dumbass man who just fired 5 rounds at them and they got back in the car with them and then had, like, it was just way more than like a traditional, women dealing with dumb men kind of thing. It's just like, I was just like, wow, this is like horribly abusive. Like
yeah. It's funny. Well, I thought the same thing. I thought that, first of all, I don't think she should have lied at all about on the interview with Gayle King. I think that definitely led to the narrative around her just being a liar and whatever. And it wasn't necessary to lie at all, because we already assumed that was the case. I mean, obviously, it's like, what else the hell would have created so much of a situation? However, I don't even understand why Gayle asked her that question. I don't. I don't understand it. And I'm not saying that. And perhaps it was because, I don't know. Maybe Gayle felt like it was a necessary thing.
Online chatter. That's what it was. And the
Perhaps.
online chatter to discredit everything that she said, that was one of the main things. That she was mad because they were having sex, and this is why her and Kelsey, quote unquote, got it. So that was something that they were trying to use to discredit her. And it pushed off into actual reporters asking the question. I don't think it really, like Megan said, I don't see where the relevance of her having sex with him months or days before that,
or the same day, it didn't matter.
Her getting shot, you know what I'm saying? I don't see that. But
so you go ahead to ask your next question, because I've been talking.
What I want to say is there's about 3 things that I want to know, because based off evidence, you know, everybody hasn't seen the court transcripts. There's still people with, you know, their narrative, and this is what happened, and if that happened, why didn't this happen? There are 2 things that people keep saying. That Kelsey's DNA is on the gun, not Tory's, and there's GSR on both of their hands. So that's what they keep pointing to. Now, I don't know, I haven't read the court documents, so I want to know how accurate those 2 statements are.
You know, and it's a good reminder to get the transcripts of everything, like the DNA expert and the GSR guy talking. I think that would help. But the DNA was inconclusive. They actually didn't take Kelsey's DNA, but when you look at the assessment of Tory's DNA, 80% of the DNA profile they got was the product of one male, and they were able to exclude Tory as that male. So the next, like the other mixture of DNA was too inconclusive to conclude if Tory was contributed or didn't contribute to that DNA. So it would have been the same with Kelsey, because Kelsey's not a man, so she wouldn't have been the contributor to the 80%. But then the other DNA samples are so small that it would, like Tory being inconclusive, it would have just been inconclusive with Kelsey. Tory did have a defense expert who opined that he thought that the results showed that one of the profiles was more likely to be a female, but that was discredited by the other DNA expert, and it just didn't have much weight in court. But I think it would help to get the transcripts of the DNA expert testimony in the GSR, because Kelsey and Tory did both have GSR on their hands, but of course the story was that Kelsey was standing right next to him when he shot her. So I mean, and a lot of the stuff from the transcripts that I've seen, I just wonder, I was like, have people actually read the stories, like the law and crime stories on Sean Kelly's testimony and the tweets about that? Because we were really clear, James from the LA Times too, that, you know, Sean was originally said that he saw 2 women fighting and he thought the flashes originated with the girl, but then he said that basically Tory took over and was shooting. So
but can I go back to this? So you said 80% of the DNA that was on the weapon was a male, but he was excluded from being the possible male.
Right. So it was always, I mean, I remember when I was watching the trial, I was like, well, it sounds like it was Quan. I mean, his driver.
Right.
Yeah. But
the driver's sounds like it's the driver's gun that's in the car.
Yeah.
And then Tory gets access to it, and this all happens. But
or then the driver took the gun from Tory, and you know what I'm saying, and it could have been. So
but everything that happened afterward, like his demeanor afterward, I mean, that when they were pulled over near Hollywood Boulevard, he had the gun at his feet. I mean, that kind of thing. There was kind of just a totality of circumstances that led to it. Or but one thing I want to do is get the transcript for closing arguments, because that would sum it up.
Right. But the GSR piece is important because we know that GSR spreads. So whoever is closest to you can have it on their clothes, can have it on their hands. Maybe even they go to be like, stop or whatever, or, you know, to different things. It can make GSR spread. So there are people who are saying that there's no evidence in this case because of those 2, that particular area around the gun.
They just don't know what evidence is. So there's tons of evidence. I mean, the testimony is evidence. The calls he made are evidence. The the statements they made are evidence. I mean, there's a ton of evidence, and it's I mean, the GSR and the DNA stuff, I just think is the product of, there's so much focus on that, but it's the product of like the CSI generation, people who just watch CSI and they think that's the only kind of evidence that there is, because the totality of the circumstances was I mean, the jury came back pretty fast against him, and that's one thing. Like, all the talk in that documentary that just came out, I'm like, 12 jurors convicted this guy. 12 people who live in LA County saw everything. They heard everything. They talked about everything in deliberations. They asked to see for a readback of Sean Kelly's testimony. They asked for a readback of the GSR testimony. They were asking for a readback of Megan's testimony, but then they said they didn't need it anymore after they heard the GSR stuff. And then they went and convicted him. So that's the one thing I'm like, there's so much, like, these documentaries that come out that just rehash what everybody knows. It's like, the one thing that I want to do is find the jurors and talk to the jurors about it. But I'm sure they don't want to come forward,
expose themselves. Yeah,
but so I would give him anonymity. So I would talk to him.
So we'll make sure we put that out there. If you're a juror and you follow us, or you follow or listen to street politicians, that Meghann is willing to give you anonymity if you are willing to talk to her. But I want to, because I know you have to go. So let's just deal with Kelsey for one more minute. So Kelsey's the first lawyer says, after her email exchange with Tory is exposed, she says, if you all are going to try to use the Kelsey shot Meg narrative, I can't be involved in that. One, because there's a lie being told that I somehow offered Kelsey money, or I was involved in trying to get her paid. And that, well,
she didn't make that connection in the email. Tory's new lawyers later tried to say that, the reason she didn't want to do the Kelsey defense is because she had a conflict and didn't want her role to be brought out. But I think it's pretty clear in the email that she tells Tory she's not comfortable advancing the Kelsey defense, primarily because she doesn't think it's a viable strategy.
Absolutely.
And I mean, Sean Hawley's an experienced criminal defense attorney, much more experienced than George McDessie, the guy that he went with. And I think she just saw the optics of it and knew it was a losing strategy to advance, and basically told him that he should find another lawyer if he wanted to do that.
Yeah, she said, you got to find another lawyer. I'm glad that you finished it, because I did see her saying, that's not true. And my thing with the Tory Lanez defenders and, his supporters is that either you're saying that she did, because their position is she just didn't want to do it because she was implicated in a possible bribe. But then that means there was something to bribe for. So either way, it doesn't help.
You and I both know that's not true, was when she was telling him about the bribe money, that she'd somehow offered bribe money to Kelsey, and she was saying that's not true. And that's one thing that people forget about in this whole Kelsey thing, is the bribe, because that documentary that just aired was so irresponsible in some of the stuff that they just aired on stuff. But her pleading the fifth, when they're like, oh, she must have something to hide, it's like, anyone who was in the situation that she would be pleading the fifth, wanting to plead the fifth and get some kind of immunity and testimony. But it's the bribery thing, guys. I mean, they're trying to pass it off like Kelsey pleaded the fifth because she's the actual shooter, and she went back and told the judge that I'm actually the one who shot Megan, and the judge was like, okay, well, we're going to give you immunity. That's ridiculous. We don't know exactly what happened, and we're never going to be able to get the transcript for that. But there's no way that's what happened. And it has everything to do with the bribery thing. Because, I think I haven't watched that documentary, but Alex Bott says, the prosecutor says in the documentary, they think Kelsey took a bribe, and they wanted to amend the charges against Tory during trial to add bribery charges. So it was all about the bribery thing. So the idea that she pleaded the fifth, it's all because of that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Gotta be. Yeah.
She has a leak. Yeah. Well, Mysonne, you might want to ask the last question.
I just want to ask this so they read Kelsey's original statement, right? After they questioned her in court, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they played the entire 80-minute interview that she did with prosecutors. It was the next day. Her testimony was over 2 days, and she recanted. She wouldn't identify Tory as the shooter. But then the judge ruled that there were so many questions in the defense portion about prosecutors pressuring her that to be fair, to make sure the jury saw the whole picture, they would hear the whole interview and just decide for themselves whether she was pressured. So that was pretty bad, and that wouldn't have come in if there hadn't been like bad lawyering like that. But that was when you really hear too, like you hear in a relaxed environment, and it sounds like she's there. I mean, she's almost like in therapy, the way she's like talking about the situation. And it's basically just up to people to decide. It's like, well, when was she telling the truth? Was she telling the truth in this interview, or was she telling the truth on the witness stand when she recanted? And the way she recanted, it was just like, I think it was just kind of obvious for people, you know?
The jurors.
Yeah.
I think pretty much basically, because that's what I got from everybody who actually was there, that it was pretty much obvious why she was recanting the statement.
Yeah.
At one point, I heard that they asked her, was Tory playing for her lawyer? And
yeah, I think they did.
What was the response to that?
I can't remember exactly. I think they have.
I think she said, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably in my story. I haven't actually looked back and read thoroughly my law and crime story on Kelsey's testimony, but it was pretty detailed. So
why do you think that if Tory had testified, it would have been different?
I'm not sure. I think it could have. I think he might as well have. It's like a Hail Mary. I mean, I kind of approach everything, and you'll learn this old newsroom tradition is you vote your job. Like if you're deciding who to vote for in an election and you're a journalist who works in a newsroom, you vote for the politician who's going to give you the best stories. So when people are like, oh, do you think Tory should have testified? I'm like, well, it would have been a hell of a good story if he testified. So of course I wanted him to testify. Whether it would have like helped his case or not, I'm not, he would have been, it would have been tough, and he would have been killed up on, especially in cross, them asking him about that phone call and everything, because the prosecutors would have been able to just like start playing that phone call for him and just being like, oh, so what did you mean when you said this? Like, I mean, it would be, he could have been freaking killed. And some other stuff too. I mean, not just the rap lyrics, but other stuff that they could have asked him about, like I don't think it probably would have been a good idea for him to testify, but it's also like, if you think you're going to get convicted, might as well do a Hail Mary. But I'm not sure if he thought he was going to be convicted.
What do you think his chances of getting this bail and actually winning an appeal, just based off your experience and knowledge of law?
Absolutely no chance for bail and 5% chance on appeal. I mean, I don't want to just say no chance on appeal because I haven't seen an opening brief and I don't know what his issues are. But the issues that were raised in the motion for new trial aren't really any kind of big appellate issues. The lawyers he has working for him don't really know what they're doing about California appellate law. I mean, this guy that he has that passes himself off as some kind of renowned appellate lawyer has only been a lawyer for like 6 years. So I think it'll be a big question of whether the appellate court, when they do issue their ruling, whether the ruling is unpublished or published, because most of their rulings are unpublished, and that, I mean, they're still public and you can see them on the website, but they don't argue or cite any kind of new case law or findings. So it's not considered any kind of thing that lawyers can cite in their rulings. So I think it's probably unlikely it'll even be a published opinion, but we'll just see what the issues are. But I think this case is pretty much over for a long time. Until the 14th, the bail hearing. I mean, if that actually happens, but there's zero chance he's going to get bail.
Well, I thank you so much for, coming. And we could probably do 3 more hours of conversation.
Yeah. I'd be happy to. I got to do this YouTube live thing now.
Yeah.
But I'd be happy to talk
and
about it.
Please go ahead and do it. But tell folks before you go how they can subscribe to your channels and your reporting, because now in your independence, you have sort of been forced to organize yourself.
Yes, I am. I'm a
subscriber. I just became a subscriber.
Thank you so much. The paid subscriptions go a long way. But legalaffairsandtrials.com, that's my Substack. And I've got a mailing list that I cover trials, legal issues in Los Angeles, some celebrity news, but also some big high profile criminal cases, federal public corruption cases. There's a lot of public corruption in LA. I mean, if ever anyone sees the state of downtown Los Angeles, you can find some politicians to blame, because the U.S. Attorney's Office says that corruption is a way of life in LA politics, and they're trying to root it all out. So there's been some pretty significant prison sentences handed down to like a Bel Air millionaire and that kind of thing recently. So I'm kind of trying to keep track of all that. And YouTube too. I'm kind of trying to get into the YouTube. Megan Cuniff is my YouTube channel, but Substack is the big thing. I'm trying to get into Substack notes more to kind of replace Twitter, but y'all can find me there.
Yeah, Twitter's
so
terrible for me. I don't even go on it. It's violent. So
yeah, it is.
Because I'm sure your future is beyond your understanding in terms of where you're going. And I just want to say on behalf of not just Black women, but Black people, that I appreciate the fact that you are not just covering our stories, but also trying to understand our history by reading the books and learning the things and being accessible to those of us who have reached out to you. It means a lot. And, you know, it's hard to find trusted individuals to cover our stories. And we just hope, you know, you continue to do what you're doing and even get better and more, whatever we can do to help increase your platform. We want to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that's one of the best, you know, advice I got, is to be an ally. Like, consider this monumental life experience as like a catalyst for the rest of my life to be an ally and keep working on that. So thank you. That means a lot.
Be an ally and just keep giving them credible information. You know,
yes.
And that's because it's so hard to find that on this internet right now. So, you know, it was a breath of fresh air, you know, just hearing you, just listening to you, and just seeing that actually what you were saying actually played out in real life. It wasn't like listening to a lot of these people that just was just throwing things at the wall, trying to get something to stick. So we really appreciate the professionalism that you come with.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. It was awesome to meet you.
Thank you. Good interview. Lots of stuff left uncovered.
Yes, I wanted to ask about Quan, that because I remember she posted that he walked into the courtroom the day, you know, of when the case was over. Like, how did that go? It was a lot of things that I wanted to know, but she, for the most part, she gave us information, man.
So a lot of things left uncovered, and I see where there are people who are either diehard Tory Lanez fans, and or they are just biased, or not biased, they are traumatized from the history of Black men in the system and all of that. I can see where they found places that they could stick and say, no, you know, this is not 100% sure. But I can tell you that in almost every case that I've ever been involved with, it's never 100% anything in court, because it's later. It's not like court is happening the same night of an incident. So the people have changed stories. Evidence doesn't always show up as it should. And to be quite honest, one of the things that I think I'm hearing from this whole scenario is that even the way the LAPD handled the situation was shitty, because of the fact that it was a Black woman who was shot, or who stepped on glass or whatever, right? And let's keep in mind that the fact that the glass thing was even out there, and they are not doctors, so they have no way of knowing that there would actually be bullet fragments found in her feet later. It wasn't that serious. And that's what they do with us as Black people. And of course, with Black women, it's like, you know, whatever, we'll lose the bullet fragments at the hospital. Nobody cares. They don't care to get everybody's DNA. Quan should have had to give a DNA sample. All of that should have happened. And that makes people feel like they can't trust the system. But to Megan's point, there are many different pieces surrounding the whole thing that shows you what took place. And Sean Kelly, while he says there's flashes, that could be jury, it could be a whole lot of things. But the one thing that he was very clear about is a man standing over the door or over something, and that there were a number of shots that he saw. He continuously said that. He never changed that. He said he saw flashes. He thought maybe, but he absolutely saw a man with a gun over the thing, and the number of shots that he said he heard were consistent with the ring bells. And so for people who keep trying to make the case that Kelsey was shooting first and then he might have grabbed the gun, the sound doesn't go pop, pop, or pop, and then there's a long time in between, and then all of a sudden pop, pop, or it again. It is pop, 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 and I think 5. It's either 4 or 5 shots. And the man always said that he saw someone do that. So either what people are trying to say is that there was 10 shots or 7 or 8 or 3 we didn't hear or 2 we didn't hear, and then a space and then more, or the bottom line is what it is, that the man shot at the ground, more than likely trying to be stupid, just I'm a pop, pop, pop at the ground to try to put fear in her, and it ricocheted and fragments hit her foot. That's what happened.
I mean, allegedly, but for me,
no, it's not allegedly because you've been convicted of it.
I mean, based on
once you've been convicted of something,
no more,
people don't have to say allegedly because you've actually been convicted of it.
Well,
now,
for me, coming from where I come from, knowing that a man has an appeal, I don't know that to be true. That was the testimony of the person. So allegedly, it could be true, whatever it is. What I say is this, this situation got out of hand and it went further than it should have. And I think I say all the time that Tory put himself in this situation. When you look from the beginning and when you talk about how, the police did a bad job. I think the police did the job based on they seen 3 people together that look like 4 people together that look like they probably had a situation. Nobody really wanted to give up any information, so they didn't pry as hard. They didn't think there was a situation that merited them saying, "Look, we gotta lock somebody up. We found somebody with a gun. Okay, cool. That's the furthest we're gonna take this situation." They didn't. The rest of the dynamics wasn't something that they looked into. This gun was under this person's car. Boom, we're gonna arrest this person for the gun. They didn't think about all of the rest of the intangible situation. And I think that Tory's ego and the way that he carried on social media and in the media caused a woman who was actually trying to protect him to feel like, I don't want to protect him no more because the level of defamation that he's doing to me, I don't feel protected. And I think, although I don't think she should have been shot or anything, but I really don't think that she had any initial want to put the man in jail. I think they did have a friendship, relationship, whatever it was, and even though at that point it probably was over, I don't think immediately she wanted to go forward with putting that man in jail. And I think the things that he did after that night contributed to his own demise, and that's why we're here. And based on that, my I don't get it, man. I just don't get why we hate us. Malcolm X said,
I get it. I get why we hate us.
I really don't. Malcolm X
do.
Said, who taught you to hate yourself? When I look at all of these situations that we talked about today, from the woman who's got hit with the brick to Spice and Erica Mena to Tory Lanez and Megan's Stallion, it comes back to self-hate, right? It comes back to people who are harmed, people who have been wronged, shot, hit with bricks, disrespected, racial slurs. All 3 of the people who are actually had something done to them are actually being villainized, right? And it's sad to me that Black women have to deal with this shit. It really is. Like, I never used to say, like, we always had conversation. I used to debate y'all down. Like, nah, you don't understand what Black men go through, telling you this and that, you don't understand. And I used to, and I will argue you down. And over years, I started to really see the level of bias and the level of disrespect that Black women actually feel and actually experience on a daily basis. The neglect, it's mind-boggling. The shit that I'm actually able to see now is just mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling to me that regardless of evidence that could be shown or anything, people will justify harm and disrespect that comes to Black women, man. So I don't understand how we got that far in self-hate. I don't understand how, you know, a culture that was so unified at once, you know, a culture that was, even after slavery, we were one of the main, you know, the main fundamental values of our culture was to protect our children and our women. That's what it was built on. You know, the Black woman has always been the foundation of our culture. And I don't know how we move so far away from that, man. And I really just don't get that.
I mean, God bless us. Well, some of us are going to continue to sound the alarm. So
some of us going to always stand up for Black women. Y'all always got an ally for me. Just know.
We appreciate you, Black man. And we have been and will continue. We have been and will continue to stand up for Black men as well. And, you know, as time goes on, the more we educate people, they come along. We lose some, we win some, but we win many more.
With that said, I'm not going to always be right. Tamika D. Mallory's not going to always be wrong. We will both always be authentic.
Peace.
That's how we own it. That's how we own it.